Welcome back to Cadet Rob's Insignia page, and it's been a while since I made a video about Insignia specifically, but today I've been doing a lot of research on World War I Army enlisted chevrons, and so just kind of want to go through these. So the Army kind of wanted to be the Navy when it comes to insignia during World War I. They had an incredibly large number of rank and insignia patches, and so even though they only had just a handful, they didn't really have grades yet. When I say grade, I mean grade in rank. The current Army has E1 through E9 as their pay grades. Back in World War II, it was grade 7, which was a private, and grade 1, which was a master sergeant. But during this time period, the Army didn't have grades. They kind of sort of did, but they had pay levels, really. And so you can't really fit these into grades. But let's just start with the basics. These insignia also came in a dress uniform version, and maybe this took me several days of research and photoshopping to come up with all these patches. But maybe I'll work on some colored ones in the future for some of the more common. I doubt I'll do the complete set in color, but maybe just a sample in color for the different branches. So anyways, as you can see by my reference marks, I have 10 different references just for this. So the basic soldiers in our infantry, artillery, cavalry, they just usually didn't wear any specialized patches. They had privates, which didn't wear any rank. Lance corporals wore a single chevron, and then corporals, which they commanded a squad, and then sergeants had 3 chevrons, they commanded a platoon. Then you had a first sergeant, they commanded a company, or when I say commanded, under an officer, officer was over them. And then a color sergeant was a regimental color sergeant. And then you had your battalion sergeant majors, or your squadron for the Air Corps, and then your regimental sergeant major. All right. Some of these, they said they had 128. I've only been able to find references of 119, I think, different ranks or insignia of rank. And so if I can find any of the missing ones, I'll let you know. So, all right, aviation, they had the standard, private first class through the air sergeant, the air service sergeant first class. The air service, they were, they had the prop and wings, which would go on into World War II even. And then above their sergeant first class, they just had a master signals electrician. So, the air service is part of the signals corps, right, at this time period. So I think that's kind of why you see that signals electrician. So, kind of a master mechanic. All right, Bansmen. So you had your private first class, corporal, sergeant, and then you had your enlisted band leader and your senior enlisted band leader. Now, sometimes you would see these patches. I've seen these patches with the chevrons together, and I've seen just without the chevrons, like a rounded top. And I'm assuming that's because they already had sergeant insignia, just the plain 3 chevrons, and then they would just sew those over the top of this kind of rounded off patch. I'm not sure that that's exactly what happened, but it seems likely. Buglers, you had your bugler private, your bugler sergeant, and then it's interesting because the same patch then becomes a trumpeter and then a chief musician. So I don't know what's going on there. The band has a lot of different patches and a lot of changes over the years Towards the end of the war, you had your chemical corps. So you had your private first class, corporal through first sergeant, or sergeant first class, I mean. I noticed in the chemical corps I didn't find any specialized patches anywhere over sergeant first class. They didn't seem to have any of the top ranks in the chemical corps. Maybe because the chemical corps was so new, nobody was able to rise that high to need a rank higher than sergeant first class. You know, if anybody knows of a good source of a picture or, you know, a chemical corps Insignia chart from World War I time period, just please put it in the comments. Coastal Artillery was an interesting bunch. They have a lot of patches, but not very many in rank patches. A lot of patches for what would normally be private first class rank. I'm not sure that these are all private first class because you have many variations. Like you have gunner second class, gunner first class, gun pointer, and gun commander. Pretty sure they were not all privates. You know, I have seen pictures of soldiers, of corporal, you know, of lance corporal and corporal, and even sergeant rank, wearing these patches, the round private first class patches underneath their chevrons. So I think maybe as they rose in rank, they just, you know, kept those patches that denote their specialty patches on their uniforms. You know, uniforms in the World War I time period, the uniform regulations, especially in the middle of a war, were very haphazard and not exactly always well tended to. And there was also a number of unauthorized patches. You'll find a lot of lance corporal patches with the various specialties. You know, that look like the regular corporal patch, but with just a single chevron. Though, you know, kind of looks like a modern day private first class patch. Those are completely unauthorized patches for the time period. All right, a fireman, you know, is an interesting patch. I don't know if that patch is meant to be added on to any of the, you know, ranks like private. I mean, lance corporal. I always want to call lance corporal private because it looks like private to me. But anyways, lance corporal, or sergeant. I don't know if that's the idea. And then they had this interesting rank of fireman first class. And I don't really know where it fits in, but I'm pretty sure it outranks a fireman. Who knows? If anybody has any good information on that, please comment down below. Then you had your fireman sergeant, and then your assistant engineer and your engineer. I don't know if those focus on earthworks, or, you know, if they're more focused on repairing guns or the mines or the mine layers. Interesting to find that out. I don't really know. Okay, so your actual gunners, you have the plotter, you have your gunner second class, gunner first class, observer second class, observer first class, gun pointer and gun commander, and then you have your master gunner. And then for your mine layers, you have your second class mine gunner, first class mine gunner, chief mine planter, and your mine casement electrician, and then finally your coxswain. So obviously a boat pilot of some kind. Drum major, so we're back into the music area. You have your drum major first sergeant, and your master drum major. So very interesting, 3 different grades of drum majors. Maybe for different size bands, or bands attached to different levels, like battalions and regiments and higher divisions, corps, whatever. Electricians, you have your radio sergeant, which I thought was interesting because all the rest of them are electricians, but your first level is radio sergeant. And there's no electrician patches below sergeant, so there's no corporal or lance corporal or private first class that I've been able to find. So radio sergeant, then electrical sergeant first class, electrician sergeant second class, electrician sergeant first class, and your master electrician. So a lot of a lot of variation in the electrician ranks, especially at the highest end. So then you have your Corps of Engineers, private first class, and up, master engineer, senior master engineer. And you're starting to see, with these groupings of patches, you're seeing the beginnings of the modern symbols for the various corps. Okay, mechanics, you have your mechanic private first class and your master mechanic. And then under, I have it labeled medical, but it should be labeled hospital. I'll make that change soon. So you have a hospital private first class, a hospital corporal, hospital sergeant, a hospital sergeant first class, and then the interesting rank of hospital sergeant. So I'm assuming this person is in charge of the hospital because it's very different from any other ranks of this time period with the 2 rocker bars under the chevrons. So it's very unique. There's a handful of other ones. I think there's a band one that's similar to this, but very unique to have the 2 rockers. Very few ranks have the 2 rockers. So then you have your master hospital sergeant and your senior master hospital sergeant. Then cooks and commissary. So the mess and commissary, I think it started at war as being called the mess, and then over time they changed the name to commissary. At the lower ends you have your cooks and your mess sergeants, and then you have your commissary sergeants and your company commissary sergeant. And then your battalion and regimental commissary sergeants. Ordnance. So ordnance follows the normal path. And then the master ordnance sergeant. I don't know why it dropped it down here on my diagram, but it did. Quartermaster is pretty normal across the board. And then signals. The one thing that's different about signals is this master electrician that they kind of drop in the middle of there. Stable. So you have a lot of different positions in the stable. You have farriers, saddlers, shoers, and wagoners, all under a stable sergeant. And then supply, not to be confused with quartermaster. These would be embedded into the regular units. A company supply sergeant, a battalion supply sergeant, a regimental supply sergeant. So these are officer or non-commissioned officers inside of your unit who are in charge of supply for your unit, not the actual quartermaster corps, which is about moving material around and getting it to the right places. So this is the first version, and I haven't done the second version of tanks yet. I'm not even sure if they were called armor yet at this point. But you have your tank private first class. I know it looks almost like a face, but it's a stylized version of the front of an early tank, which were kind of almost ship shaped in the front. So it's like it's looking right at you. Then you have your corporal and sergeant, and then your master sergeant and your senior master sergeant. Transportation corps, you have your various ones, like every other one, looks pretty normal across the way. Motor transport, which is different somehow than the transportation corps. So from my knowledge of what I know about World War I, I'm assuming that these motor transport may have been a lot of African American units. Some of them were tasked simply to do driving. So you get your assistant chauffeur, your assistant truck master, and your truck master. And then finally you have your master transport sergeant. And then other private first class patches for infantry, artillery, and cavalry. And of course, all of these patches, these round patches, then as the war goes on, they become the copper disc insignia that ends up moving from the shoulder to then being on the collar as the war moves on, and becomes the insignia of the different the different branches that we know today in the modern army. It's still brass, but it's more of a golden color brass. Then in this time period, it was more of a copper, kind of a browner, coppery color. So, all right, like, share, subscribe, put in the comments anything that you'd be interested in about these World War I chevrons, and I hope you have a great day.